Welcome, everybody, to the Media Planet Podcast number 2. I'm your host, John, here with Jeff. And today's episode, we're going to go over some video gaming franchises that have stood the test of time. Started even back from the NES to even some newer franchises that have been around for a few years. Before we get started, though, Jeff has got something that he wants to get off his chest, so we're going to let him have his spew real quick. Go ahead.
All right. I know most of you that follow me on social media probably have already heard this. It's about the American Sniper movie that's creating such a buzz right now. I don't know. I hate it. It's always distasteful to talk negatively about the deceased, but I have a problem personally with this new American Sniper movie. I'm sure it's a great movie, and Clint Eastwood, being 90 or whatever he is, making movies still, so that's good for him and all. But I have a problem with it because, like Seth Rogen went on Twitter, and he said that it reminded him of the third act of Inglourious Basterds, which, if you don't remember or haven't seen that movie, in the third act, Hitler has a sniper of his who stayed up in the sniper nest for, what was it, days or something, and he killed like 300 guys or some outlandish number, and they made a movie about him to kind of glorify, the Nazi Party and really boost the morale and patriotism for Hitler's cause and all that kind of stuff. And so it almost seemed like that kind of deal for us, though, like patronizing the sniper who killed. In his book, he said like 180. If you asked him in person, he said 255, which the exaggeration, that's a whole other topic with him. But that's what Seth Rogen said, is it reminded him of that. And he got tons of backlash over it. And then Michael Moore came out and said that he felt that snipers were cowards or something, or he was raised to believe that because his father's brother, they both fought in World War II, and his father's brother, his uncle, was killed by a sniper, shot in the back or something like that. And so I can kind of see that viewpoint because the snipers aren't really on the front lines. They're hiding in the bushes somewhere or up on a cliff somewhere, and you got your back turned and you just get shot and you're dead. And it wasn't exactly a fair fight. But then again, you're fighting a war, so I mean, is it really fair either way? But yeah, so I thought it was kind of stupid though that Seth Rogen got all this backlash over it, because people just can't hardly seem to understand. Like, just because the guy's a soldier, or just because somebody does one thing, that everybody on the planet is supposed to respect them. Because it sounds like I'm just talking bad about the guy, but I didn't like him long before he died, because he came up with this whole story about how he punched out Jesse Ventura, former WWF superstar, former governor of Minnesota, U.S. Navy SEAL. Chris Kyle, the American Sniper, came up with this story about how he punched out Ventura in a bar, and because Ventura was saying that the SEALs deserve to lose a few. And Ventura actually took him to court over this, and it was proven that Chris Kyle lied about it. It never even happened in the first place. Ventura was not even in that location when Chris Kyle said that it happened. And so obviously he was just trying to make up this story to sell his book or whatever his agenda was at the moment. Chris Kyle also told a story back in 2007 or 2009, one of the two, about how two black teenagers tried to steal his pickup truck at a gas station in Texas, and how he shot them both dead because he was pretending to get his keys out of his truck, and he pulled out his handgun and shot both of these teenagers dead at the gas station. And the reporters actually went into this, and they looked for anything. The coroner's office had no records at all about anybody dying in that fashion at that gas station that he had named. They checked with all the gas stations in the area. None of them ever had anything like that happen there. They checked with all the police stations. I mean, it was just a blatant lie there. There was another story that he told about in 2003, I believe, whenever the Hurricane Katrina hit. Him and a buddy of his, they were fellow snipers, they went down to Louisiana and sat on top of the Superdome, sniping the people who were causing trouble around Hurricane Katrina, looters and stuff like that. And he said he killed about 30 people between the two of them. And again, reporters checked on it. They had no records of this sort of deal being licensed at all. These two guys doing this, and no report of that actually happening whatsoever. So again, it all kind of just circles back into this propaganda, war, pro-war type deal. I don't know. I mean, it's. I don't even have a point here. I'm just frustrated that people are crapping all over Seth Rogen just for pointing out the obvious, which everybody else can't seem to even, fathom that a soldier could do anything wrong. I mean, there are tons of other soldiers out there just like Chris Kyle, and there are tons of them who don't lie like that, don't make up these fantastical stories, don't try and become a multi-millionaire off selling a book about what, stuff that other people do too. I don't know. It's just really, really frustrating, and I hope that people aren't hating me because I'm saying this, but I'm just trying to get this out. Like, why do people feel this way? I mean, it doesn't make sense, but there are tough issues. This isn't really the podcast where that's supposed to be discussed, but there are issues like this, and it's life, and it happens. And people are like, oh, you can't criticize a soldier. You've never seen that kind of thing. You've never been through this sort of deal. And John, let's talk about some video games.
Okay, so let's get into video games here. That's a whole nother podcast, though. Although it does have to do with the movie, but
yes.
Today's video games. Anyway, so we were discussing about doing this video game franchise thing, and we decided that we'd figure out which ones have actually stood the test of time. And there's quite a few that have, but I think that we're just going to highlight a few and just kind of give some mentions on some others. I guess the first thing that, the one that everybody knows, Super Mario Brothers. Obviously, that franchise has been around forever. With Mario made his first debut appearance in Donkey Kong arcade game in 1981. He didn't actually get his own game until 83, in which was an arcade game. And of course, obviously, Super Mario Brothers released on the NES, the Nintendo, in 85. That came with every Nintendo system. And he's pretty well been packaged in every Nintendo system up to the Wii, where he really didn't have, you got Wii Sports, I think, with the Wii.
Yeah, that was a whole new gimmick.
Yeah, and really when the Wii U, I bought my son a Wii U he got one for Christmas a couple of years ago, and it did come with new Super Mario Brothers Wii U. I mean, so they still package it up with it. The other thing on that one is that I thought was pretty neat. Obviously, when you line up all the games, you've got great games. There's one game that stands out, and it's I think Super Mario Brothers 2. Obviously, it's different than the rest of them. It's not the same. And come to find out, when I was researching this, there was a game released in Japan. It's called Doki Doki Panic. And you have a whole prologue, kids reading a book, they get sucked into this book, 4 heroes go in to save them. You put the game side by side, it's the exact game. All they did was they took those characters out of that Doki Doki Panic and put the Mario characters in. And, I mean, that's how they came, because they said they didn't feel that Americans wanted the same game of Super Mario Brothers again. Now, of course, later on, Super Nintendo released Super Mario All-Stars. You have Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels, which was Super Mario Brothers 2. Technically, that was the sequel, but
yeah, and
it's kind of a neat little story there, and I mean, in the evolution of Mario too. I mean, you see him go from a 2-dimensional side scroller to a 3D world. I mean, now he's in 3D worlds, back to 2D scrollers, and it's just franchise has survived, and it's going to be around as long as Nintendo's around. That franchise will still be here.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody has a Mario memory. I think everybody on the planet who has played video games, chances are they've played a Mario game at some point. And it's interesting that you mentioned it starts out as a 2D side-scroller and then goes 3D and then even back to 2D. And some of the games, like speaking of 2D, you've got the Paper Mario that was a big hit for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Huge hit.
I never actually played Paper Mario, though. Did you?
I didn't, but my wife did actually. She played Super Paper Mario Wii, and she went through it and played it, and she loved it. She was. It took her a while to get through it, but she made it through it. But she really enjoyed it. She likes those Paper Mario games, I think, better. This new Super Mario Brothers that was on the Wii, we really enjoyed it because it was kind of reminiscent of the old side scrollers. I
Yeah.
like the Galaxy games. I like the 3D feel. It was kind of neat, just something different.
Super Mario Galaxy is still one of my favorite games of all time. I know it didn't make my top 5 in the last episode, but it's still one of my favorites. Galaxy and Galaxy 2, really. I've never beat Galaxy 2. I still need to do that. But that one and then Super Mario Brothers 3, I really liked. I have a DS, and I got the new Super Mario Brothers for that one. I need to get the 3DS. I would love to have one of those. Did they have? I think they have Mario games for that one.
Son absolutely loves his.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to bring up on the Super Mario series, one of the evolutions that we've seen that I remember, one of my favorite Mario games, it was on Super Nintendo, and it was Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Well, it was released in '96, and it was actually made by the same people that made Final Fantasy VII, Square Productions. So you had Mario set up as, like a Final Fantasy game. You had to pick the attack and whether you're going to attack, use an item and stuff. And I just really enjoyed it. It was a nice adventure game. Something different from your same old Mario game.
And what system was that on?
That was on Super Nintendo. You can actually get it on the Wii U. I know you can get it on the Wii Virtual Console. You get on there, you can download it. But it's on the Super Nintendo.
That's so cool. I never even knew that existed.
It's a pretty neat game. I mean, it's not a hard game by any means, but it is a fun because it's something different. It's not the same old. I mean, and they wound up using this system again for, I think, Bowser's Inside Story and Super Mario Dream Team, and they were both 3DS games, I believe. My son has them, and it had the same type of thing. You had to pick your attack, pick the guy you were attacking, just like a Final Fantasy game. You had this whole adventure to play out and fight enemies.
Yeah. So I think the next game I would like to cover, a really good franchise. We're kind of, I mean, I guess we could work chronologically, starting early and going newer.
No, don't matter. Just pick a game and go.
One of them was Crash Bandicoot, which was one of my personal favorites. I thought that it was always interesting how he started out as kind of being the mascot for PlayStation. And he was made by Naughty Dog. And it was very popular and well received in the Sony world, really, overall. It was developed by Naughty Dog, like I said, for the PlayStation in 1996, and that spawned the franchise all around this one character. It was an anthropomorphic cartoon. I think I said that right. His nemesis was Dr. Neo Cortex. I don't know if anybody actually... I mean, I'm sure people played Crash Bandicoot if you played a PlayStation before. But yeah, like I said, Neo Cortex was his arch rival. And when they were coming up with Crash Bandicoot's name, they actually got some trouble on that one because the marketing team thought they wanted to give him more of a, not really an animalistic name, but they took the name of an animal that he's based on, and they kind of added that around the destruction of boxes. You know how when you're in Crash Bandicoot, you go through and you kind of spin or twirl or whatever, or you can jump or whatever. Yeah, and destroy these boxes to get peaches and all that kind of stuff. It shows you how innocent games used to be. Like Mario, you're hopping on turtles, and you're collecting peaches with Crash Bandicoot. But so the name Crash obviously came from crashing these boxes, and Bandicoot was kind of the character he was based on, or the animal. But one of the other marketing teams, they wanted to name him Wuzzle or Wez or Wezzy the Wombat or Ozzy the Oxel. And that prompted Naughty Dog to threaten to leave the production, and marketing backed off, and he was crowned Crash Bandicoot. So he actually...
I think that...
Uh-oh, we might have lost John. Well, while he's reconnecting to the reconnecting to the podcast here, I'll kind of expand on that idea. I always played Crash Bandicoot from the first game, then Crash Bandicoot 2, and then 3, which was called Warped. I don't know if many people remember that, but that one I think it took a big step in terms of difficulty. because I had a lot of trouble getting through that game because it was more complex, and I was like maybe 15 when I was playing this game. So it took a little while for me to get through it, and I'm sure it was fairly frustrating at the time. They have all these games on the PlayStation Network. You can purchase them, like the classic games, as digital downloads. That's pretty cool how they can kind of be preserved forever, really. And some of them they remaster and that kind of thing. But even with Crash Bandicoot, they went on to make another game based on Crash. There was Crash Bash, which was kind of a Mario Party type game. And they even had Super Mario. You know how they have Mario Kart. They actually went on to make Crash. What was it called? It was the Crash Bandicoot kart racing game. What was it called? Crash Team Racing is what it was called. And that was another one of my favorites. That was like one of those. I used to get these magazines that were called PSM, or the PlayStation Magazine. And I remember on the back cover, they had a big thing for Crash Team Racing, and inside there was like a strategy guide, and they were showing all these karts and everything. And I was like a 14-year-old kid, and seeing this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And that was one of those games that I had always wanted, and I just never did get a hold of it until a few years back, really. And I'm 25 now, so if that tells you anything, it's been a little while. But yeah, so Crash Bandicoot will always hold a special place in my heart with Naughty Dog. And Naughty Dog has been such a... They are a franchise in themselves. I mean, maybe they're the literal definition of a franchise, because they started out with Crash Bandicoot. They may have even had something before Crash. I'm not totally sure. I think that might have been the first one. But then they moved on from Crash Bandicoot to Jak and Daxter. And that was another very successful franchise, and they actually did those HD remakes of Jak and Daxter, which I did purchase, obviously. So, John, it looks like you're back. You're about to say something.
Internet trouble. That's all I can blame it on. Bad internet service. Gonna fix that later. Anyway, on the Crash Bandicoot, you're talking about the names and stuff. I think that if they named it any of them others, I don't think that'd be something we'd be talking about today. Because names make a huge deal about how you look at a game. I mean, same as movies and stuff. Nobody will think of the movie if they say Xandu, which was a 80s film. Nobody thinks, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, even
Terminator. Everybody knows Terminator. That was.
yeah. Kind of in that same vein as like Duke Nukem. That's such a cool name, and I think it's actually allowed them to get away with making a few crappy games of recent years. I mean, they can make these crappy games, but it's so crappy that it's cool. Duke Nukem. With the land of the pigs and babes and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that's just one of those ones that when people see it, it's synonymous with a certain type of game, and that's what you're going to get.
Yeah. So what's another franchise that you really think of?
Okay, one of the ones that, of course, one of my favorites, made my top 5, the Legend of Zelda franchise, definitely.
Yeah.
Released in America in '87, Japan I think '86. I don't know. It was an adventure game. I mean, you show up on this overworld land. This old man gives you a sword, and you're off into the world to fight. I mean, the unfortunate thing with the NES games, I think that's the problem with all of them. You didn't have much of a prologue unless you stood on that start screen and wait for it to come up. You had a little story to kind of know what you were doing. But to get the full story, you had to have that instruction booklet. Well, how many kids sit there and think, I'm not going to read this, I'm just ready to play,
Yeah.
So you miss a lot, and I think that was a part of it. And but the save system on it was awesome. No passwords with numbers and letters and capitals and smalls. You have a save position. And actually, one thing I thought was pretty neat when I was doing research on this, the third level, the third dungeon, was a huge controversy for people. Because if you got the map and you looked at the shape, it shoot, I don't have a map here on my. Anyway, it looked like a swastika, like a Nazi swastika. That's what it looked like. But that's not what it was. They came out and said no. This was a manji. It's a Buddhist symbol for good fortune. it was never meant to seem like it was a swastika, like they were trying to be a white power Nazi. I mean, obviously the Japanese, I don't think we're gonna push that at this point, but
Well, wasn't the swastika originally one of those things that was supposed to mean good luck, and then they just kind of adopted that symbolism for their idea?
well, yeah, in Native American culture, if you do a swastika, it's a symbol of peace in some nations. So I mean, obviously it can mean different things, but that was the whole purpose. Is it was to be a Buddhist symbol to just mean good fortune for people. It's just meant to be fun because obviously the other maps always look like an eagle, the eagle, the iron, just a little bit of everything.
Hmm.
And one thing I did see, uh, the creator of the game, I can't pronounce his name, in Japan, when he was young, he got lost in the woods, and it took him a while to get back home. And he created this game kind of based off of that experience of the idea of exploring. He kind of wanted to capture that essence. When he was a young boy, he got lost. He found his way back, but that kind of inspired him to take that essence and go with it. That idea of adventure.
Yeah, and they did.
Obviously, the franchise has survived. The one thing about the franchise that I don't get, and this is for a podcast later, is the chronological timeline of the games. Because there is no order to these games. You have Legend of Zelda, then The Adventures of Link, direct sequel. Now after that, it's all over the place. The next one that came out was a prequel. They had another one come out that goes in between these, and that's a whole nother podcast for gaming.
Yeah, just like
game and movie sequel order. There is no order whatsoever.
Yeah, Wind Waker was actually one of my favorite Zelda games, and that was on the GameCube, and it was like a chibi Zelda or a chibi Link, a little Link, young looking. And then of course you had the what was it called? Something Princess, Twilight Princess that came out after that.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. That was actually the first Zelda game I played on the Wii, and I thought it was pretty good. The graphics were really good on it, and it had a good story too, something to follow with.
Was that
different?
But with that one, you could actually.
It came out on the GameCube first, but then when the Wii came out, they just redone it for the Wii so they could sell it on the Wii as well.
Yeah, and you could use the sword and everything, right? With the
you had to use the sword or the bow, and
Yeah, neat idea. I don't know how functional it was.
A lot more of a challenge to play.
Yeah. So let's see. What's another franchise that comes to mind? You have Sonic the Hedgehog, which has lasted a long time. You have, let's see, the Uncharted series, which has been very successful on PlayStation 2 and 3. And then also the Elder Scrolls. We can't overlook that one. 3 especially is the one that really put it on the map. And then also Oblivion and Skyrim, obviously. Skyrim will probably be held up as one of the greatest games of all time, especially for its generation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You got the Grand Theft Auto series, the Halo series. I mean, so many IPs now have been just continued on and on. I mean, people, I don't know if that says something about the gaming industry, but I think it is a good sign that we're able to create these new IPs, and they're so successful that we can continue them on, and people want more of the same.
Another one that I always thought of for the franchise was Mega Man stood the test of time. Obviously, Metal Gear has. It survived from Nintendo, kind of disappeared for a while, came back on PlayStation strong with Metal Gear Solid. Then you had Solid 2, you had Metal Gear Solid 3, 4, and you got 5 coming out. I mean, it's just, it seems like it's a non-stop series of espionage, which was kind of neat.
Yeah, Guns of the Patriots was amazing, Metal Gear Solid 4. And then also they have that one offshoot that followed, I hate to say it wrong, it's either Raiden or Raiden.
Raiden.
Yeah, and he got his own little offshoot game on the PlayStation 3, which had gorgeous graphics. I mean,
yeah, Metal Gear Solid Rising. Yeah, it was Rising.
Yeah.
And I remember that one. I didn't actually play it myself. I played the demo and absolutely loved it, and I just never got around to playing the game.
Yeah, and then they have 5. The Phantom Pain has not come out yet, but 5, the other one, they made 2 5s, which kind of confuses me.
It's like that first 5 I think was supposed to kind of introduce you into what's coming up.
Yeah, the first 5 was a prequel about Snake's father, I think, right?
Well, kind of, but that was also 3. Metal Gear Solid 3 was also about Big Boss. You actually were playing as Big Boss. Even though the character was Solid Snake, it looked like Solid Snake because they use the same model, but Metal Gear Solid 3 was actually about Big Boss, who was his father. But of
Huh.
course, in Metal Gear Solid 4, Big Boss shows back up at the end. So I mean,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, I guess. Not I mean, I played it. Big Boss shows back up, which I think leads into some of the 5. So
Yeah.
which may have
Uh,
something to do with why that first game came out first.
yeah, could be. We've only got a couple minutes left here.
I'll tell you, Castlevania was one that stood the test, I thought.
Yeah,
And it's up to you. What do you think about the Metroid series?
I actually never got to play the Metroid series. I've always heard of them though. Like throughout all the years, it's never totally gone away. And I mean, they still do the HD re-releases of Metroid. I think they just
Oh
released
yeah.
one for PlayStation 3. So that tells you something. Like we've said earlier, when they can keep continuing on and then even go back and make HD remakes. Final Fantasy is one we have to mention.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Because yeah, Final Fantasy was just a game that game started off a whole big thing that
yeah,
still goes to this day.
what was the story behind the name Final Fantasy?
Okay, so from what I could understand, the company that made Final Fantasy, they were actually going bankrupt. They were on their last dimes, and they said, "Okay, we're gonna make one last game. We're gonna call it Final Fantasy." It comes out, and nobody had ever seen anything like this, and it's just a huge hit, and it just took off from there. They never expected it to make anything. It was just a throw together game, but there was no other competition for that type of game. You had Zelda, which was kind of an adventure game, and some of that, Metroid as well is kind of adventure. The thing with Metroid, you had the isolation thing. You didn't have friends. You were on your own. But with the Zelda, you were kind of on your own, but you had the enemies, and you kind of had a few little things here and there. But Final Fantasy, you had the groups of people, and there was just nothing to compete with it at the time.
Right. It was the introduction of the group type fighting and the turn-based combat. And turn-based combat, you either love it or you hate it. I personally love it. I love turn-based strategy. I love time-based strategy like Legend of Dragoon, which is, as I said in the previous podcast, my favorite game of all time. Something interesting about the Final Fantasy games is a lot of people, chances are one of the Final Fantasy games is one of your favorite games of all time. Like John, you said Final Fantasy
Mm-hmm.
7 for yours. I said Final Fantasy 10. I mean, that's a perfect example right there of how they've been able to maintain this way of creating all these masterpieces so many times in a row. And I mean, some of them have been kind of hit or miss, but for the most part, they've all been really, really good. And they've tweaked the combat a little bit in every single one of them, so it's always a little different. I wonder with the name Final Fantasy if that might be the reason why none of the stories are connected. They're all different, aside from Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 and 13 and 13 1, 2, and 3. I don't know.
I really think that was the whole deal. I think because I thought it was gonna be a final game, so why continue that same story? Let's do something different. So and I think that also keeps the interest of the games too. You have a whole new story, a whole new set of characters to go in with. They tell their story in that game, and that's it.
Right.
And I really think that appeals to a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's always a slightly different story, slightly different looking characters. You've always got that classic Final Fantasy art style, which I really love, but it's always a little bit different, different races, different humans. You've got Final Fantasy 14 now, which is an MMORPG, which I've played a little bit of. It's really complicated for me anyway. Maybe not for some people, but for me, it's a little overwhelming with all this huge HUD all over the screen. John, you're gonna have to try that at some point pretty soon, but. Yeah, I guess that's about it. We're just about out of time. John, I will let you wrap it up here.
Okay, well, this was all right. This was our take on some franchises that lasted. If anybody knows any others, please let us know so we can look into it. Honorable mentions, of course, Castlevania. That was a big one for me. But yeah, these are just ones that we could think of off the top of our heads, just coming up and brainstorming.
Yeah,
So
and
if you know
going
of any other games, please let us know.
yeah, definitely. Going into the future, I think that one game everybody should keep their eye on or one franchise are the Telltale game series. Telltale game series. They made the Walking Dead game series, which is it comes out in episodic fashion, and they also just started a Game of Thrones one as well. And they've been able to craft this story and unique art form and everything together. I think that is one of the top new franchises that you all should look out for.
Oh yeah, I definitely keep an eye on them. But yeah, I mean, this was just our idea, and we're not sure what we're gonna do the next podcast about. We may shift over to some movies or something. So it's media. We can cover anything we want to do with media, obviously. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for this one. You got anything else to add to it?
Not really. I mean, if any of the listeners or viewers in this case, as you can see, we have video this time. If anybody has anything that they want us to go over, or like I said, ideas, stuff like that, they want to learn something about and don't really have the time to research it themselves, and they would rather just listen to it. Think of this as an audio book, but about information. So if you want to learn about something and you don't have time to do it, and you want us to discuss it and kind of go over it, and you don't have to do the work, all you have to do is listen. And that helps support us. Yeah, so
we can hunt down research. We can hunt down stuff that can usually find. You know, the internet's wide open, but who wants to sit down and do the research? That's what we're here for.
right.
Why don't you just listen to us talk about it?
Yeah.
Of course, for plugs, follow me at JGuitarRock
Yes,
on
on
Twitter.
Twitter. And I am at Jeff Jarman 55, Jarman. Everybody always wants to spell my last name differently. Jeff Jarman 55 on Twitter. You can find us both on Facebook. And check out the YouTube channels. I have the Jeff Jarman Show, a bunch of different stuff. We still have the Grim Times podcast, which is archived on YouTube as well. And John has
I got the Fright Corner, which has been hiatus for a little bit while we've been doing this, but I'm going to try to get back into it. And I mostly just cover horror movies, scary books, I mean, just anything scary, games, whatever. You know, obviously it'll kind of intertwine with this, but it's more geared to the horror, scary genre. It's not geared to just everything, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And even we could merge them together at some point. I don't know. We'll come up with a plan and see what's easiest for everybody else to find and listen to. So hopefully you all enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for listening if you are still listening, which hopefully you are, because everybody likes games. Well, not everybody. Everybody likes movies.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We'll cover movies and books. Don't worry. Just games came up first. Maybe movies next. Maybe we'll pick out some individual movies or something here soon.
Yes. All right. Well, this was the Media Planet podcast. I am Jeff. That is John. Thank you all for listening once again. And we will catch you next time on the next episode.
See you in episode